Well, hello and welcome back, everybody, to Podcast. Welcome back. It's nice to be back in my normal place after about 2 months on the road. It's good to be home. I hope that some of the issues will clean themselves up that happen when you travel. You know, it's hard to keep the microphones working perfectly. There's a bunch of issues, but we're not going to worry about it now. Remember, you have a question. You're going to email them to us at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. And let's start off with a question from Harry. And Harry says, I'm struggling with what I believe to be a shoulder impingement. I'm not going to give any medical advice. In fact, I'm just going to tell you what I have been told by smarter people than me. Yeah, that's not fair. I'm pretty smart, but medical advice in this situation isn't my lane. That's a better way to say it. Do you have any advice on how to get around this? I stopped benching for a good few weeks, and I haven't benched in this millennium. So the downside of bench pressing, sorry, Harry, to jump off of this, bench pressing has great value until it doesn't. I'm a fan of the incline bench press. As a child, I really started doing those a lot. I saved every nickel, literally dime and quarter I had for over a year to buy a Sears Roebuck adjustable incline bench. And I found even then that the incline was better on my shoulders. Military presses, single and double kettlebell presses, no shoulder issues. Bench press, boom, right there. That spot Dick Nutmeyer used to press when you were sore from benching. Ouch, still hurts. And it felt great. When I resumed, I did a few weeks of easy strength style work before gradually going back to challenging sets of singles or triples. This has done me no favors, and I went back to square one. Okay, now I'm going to answer this question a couple times, but I want you to at least hear yourself. Your shoulder got better when you stopped benching. Your shoulder felt good when you were doing easy strength, and then you went back to what hurt it in the first place, and you got hurt again. In logic courses in college, we actually used examples like this. It's not always the best method of learning things. Today, having had a further 2 weeks of not benching, I ran through your one lift a day workout pattern for bench with light weights, and I can still feel the sensation in the shoulder, so won't be pushing it hard for the foreseeable future. Do you think doing some corrective exercises are the answer, or complete rest? Okay, folks, raise your hand if you have shoulder problems. Ouch. It's a joke I use all the time at workshops. I think it's funny. No one else does. See, when I say raise your hand if you have a bad shoulder. That's funny. So if you didn't get the joke, please email me here at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com and I'll explain it. So in my world, shoulder injuries are common. I work with throwers. I work with, like in your case, Harry, people who've done a lot of bench presses. I also have worked with people who are, certifiably idiotic. They've hurt their shoulders by trying to win some kind of idiotic contest in the gym that means nothing to anybody. And they do something that's a little rough on the shoulder. Shoulder Health 101, just kind of like hip health. In Chinese medicine, the shoulders and the hips are called the four knots, Knots. It's like your shoelaces. You want them tight enough to keep the shoelace and the shoe tight, but loose enough to be able to get them off so you can take the shoe off. Shoulders and hips are the same way. You want them tight enough so that when you throw something, you hit somebody, everything stays together, but loose enough so you have a full range of motion. And with this chair here, obviously, I don't. So let's go at this in two ways. First, push-ups and bench press seem to really be an issue with a lot of people and shoulder health. Am I saying not do them? Well, no, I didn't say that. But if you're like me, and I used to bench press 5 to 8 times a week, and then throw the discus, and then throw baseballs and throw other things. Oh, my shoulder hurts. I could barely touch my hair the first couple of months of junior college when I was taught the javelin with a very poor technical model. And between all the bench pressing and all the other stuff, my shoulder barely held on. So lesson number 1 is try to avoid things that hurt it. And well, here's the deal. Push-ups and bench press seemed over time, with a lot of reps and sets, a lot of volume, seem to hurt some people's shoulders. Is the bench press or the push-up bad? No, not even a little bit. Having said that, if every time there's a day that ends in the word day, the joke, any day of the week that ends with a Y, if you're doing push-ups or bench press every single day of the week, things are going to pop up. And now it could be something like structural, or it could be when you get so much work into a certain place that you just start to rub things raw or get inflammation, and then you train on top of the inflammation, you might have yourself a little injury. So first off, I would say, especially reading your thing, Harry, with your bench press work, go back to easy strength, go back to moderation. Maybe it's 1 day a week like you're doing with 1 lift a day, but you have to moderate it somehow, my friend. Number 2 is then for basic rehab, the best thing I know is simply hanging. When I got that book called The Kauai Study, that shoulder surgeon in Hawaii, 92 out of 93 people who were going to get shoulder surgery did not need it after the hanging protocol. The one woman dropped out, and that's the 93rd. All they did was hang. Now, here's the thing. When I say something like just hang from a bar, somebody's going to ask me like 5 more additional questions, because it seems impossible sometimes for people to think for themselves. But I just hang. Most of the time, I just hang in my home gym, because the pull-up bar is too low for me with my height and my arm length. I hang with my knees tucked up to my chest. My knees are up, tucked to my chest. Happens in the first few seconds, and it just slowly falls away. But just hanging seems to be miraculous for some people. If you have monkey bars, for some people, monkey bars can be very helpful. When I go see my DPT, who's marvelous, Mike is amazing. He'll show me sometimes some of these other movements and stuff. But anytime you're doing rehab work, and part of what you want to think to yourself is, well, let's go back to see if we can get ourselves in a place to not have to do rehab work anymore. Let's look at better exercise choices, better look at volume, that's the reps and sets, better look at loading. And when you do that, sometimes you come to these conclusions like I have, that maybe this exercise should be substituted for this one. Even though this rep and set scheme works for you, Harry, it doesn't work for me. It can be that simple. There are some moves, and if you're on the site, go to the book. It's in the download section. It's Tim Anderson's original strength book. And he has some very simple little easy movements. He gave me an exercise. It's basically the child's pose on the ground, but then you add rocking into it for shoulder health. So you got to imagine my feet and knees are both on the ground. My hands are reached out. I like to make a little triangle, and then I just pump and rock. So I'm rocking my hips, which makes them feel good, and I'm pumping my shoulders, which makes them feel good. And I try to do that. A couple of years back, I did that between every set of Olympic lifting. Now I just tossed it in because I'm doing the hanging also. Well, every time I work with people whose shoulders are bothering them, they usually have a pretty good history of this thing showing up and then showing up and then showing up. Like you did, you rest, you fix it, and then you go right back and do the things you did before. I believe in some places they call that the definition of insanity. But I'm not faulting you, Harry. I'm just saying that maybe I want you to think about your exercise selection, think about your long-term goals, and let's just see if you can come up with a few ideas. And if you just love the bench and you're going to bench, maybe stick with the one lift a day, so bench once a week, and really take your time getting up there and the volume, reps and sets, and the load. You may have to check your ego at the door until this gets better. If you also toss in the hanging and maybe see a good, I think a few of the ways you spelled things, it seems like you're from Europe. I think they're called physios there. Maybe see a good physio. There might be a few simple exercises that'll give you relief and maybe even make it so that you can go back to your benching before the shoulder issues. That would be best. So, very simply, if you're having issues with any part of your body caused by training, first look at the exercise selection, then look at the volume, and then look at the load. I hope that helps. That's a good question, Harry. We have a question from Stefan. He says this: I'm 54 years old and started exercising with kettlebells in 2020. Relatively new trainer, but let's go. I stick to a very basic routine of swings, goblet squats, get-ups, and press variations, guided mostly by your tutorials on Dan John University and your books on the subject. Hardstyle Kettlebell Challenge is a great read. Yeah, that's available at Amazon if you're interested. The downside, of course, of Amazon is that the authors don't get paid well, but that's where it is, so good luck to you. I like this, and I don't... what I'd love to see right now, Stefan, is for you to say, and gosh, Dan, thanks for everything you've done. I'm going to continue on this track, and I love it. But no one ever says that. Instead, since this is working well, let's mess it up, and you do something interesting here. Recently, I stumbled upon an exercise called the squat swing on YouTube and other social media sites. I then reread the HKC Hardstyle Kettlebell Challenge book, available on Amazon. My grandsons need a college education, so please buy them. Specifically the section on the hip displacement continuum, and said to myself, I am never doing this squat swing. Stefan, that brings absolute joy to my ears. Don't do an exercise that somebody on Instagram or YouTube just decided on a whim one day, I'm going to invent an exercise. Before I ever share an exercise or even training idea with any of you, the first thing I do is I do it. And I do a lot of them. And I test it on myself. Then I test it on a specific group of people. It would be funny for me to say a specific group of people I don't like, but that's not true. And we test things out and we get a sense of things. And if, like when we did this one training program and we all ended up injured, I sit back and say, I can't recommend that. If on the other hand, like Mass Made Simple, also available on Amazon and on Target Publications, the results were so good, I wouldn't say, the word literally always comes up, but I had that book written and finished faster than any book I've ever written in my life, because the results from the Mass Made Simple program were so amazing, I wanted to share it. And people keep telling me about their success. But here we go. The one difference I can see that in the squat swing that I viewed, the squat portion occurs in what is supposed to be the plank position, where in your book, the squat occurs when the bell is tossed between the legs. Okay, Stefan put asterisks on squat. In the kettlebell swing, the position is called a hinge. At least that's the term I came up with. So it's hinge, plank, hinge, plank, hinge, plank. And that's the way you do a kettlebell swing. Either way, the risk of injury appears to be the same. Am I correct? Hi, I'm Dan John, and I would like to talk about the squat swing kettlebell exercise. Now, there is an exercise we used to do at the certs 14, 15 years ago that was called the bootstrapper squat. And frankly, I still think it's a great exercise. You drop yourself into the bottom of the goblet squat, and then all you do, you're sitting with your elbows pushing your knees out. In that position, you push your butt back into a hinge and then slide back into the squat. There's no ballistic to it. And I got to tell you one thing, for my hurdlers, my sprinters, my American football players, and my soccer players, they would tell me that this made them feel very good after playing their sport, long bus ride, long road trip. It really made them feel good. And I'm going to say in the hamstrings, because that's where they would show, but really it's that whole area from probably your calves. Remember, your hamstrings insert underneath the calf muscles. From your calves all the way up to probably your mid-back. It's just a nice, easy stretch. So there is value to that bootstrapper squat. But in this ballistic style, I just cannot. And what are you trying to get out of it? Just more work? If you want more work, just do a bunch of jumping jacks. Run up a hill. Run up K2 or Mount Everest or something if you want more work. You have to be able to defend why you're doing an exercise. And just because it's fun or, ooh, we're going to do this Jane Fonda nonsense out of, go for the burn. Just because you're going for the burn doesn't mean it's a good thing, okay? I can't thank you enough, Stefan, for this question. First off, you did something I like a lot. And a gentle listener, I want you to hear what he said. I'm 54 years old, and I started exercising with kettlebells in 2020. He does swings, goblet squats, get-ups, and press variation. And he focuses on them based on the Dan John University tutorials and a book, Hardstyle Kettlebell Challenge. Great. It's all my material. So obviously, yay for me and yay for you. But what I like about what he did here is he has a foundation. He's only been lifting for a couple of years. But he has a foundation, and that foundation, that lens guides him. So when he sees an exercise done by these influencers or these YouTubers or whatever, he stops, he sees this, he puts it back in his lens, and he goes, that doesn't seem right. Let me ask somebody who knows what's going on. And am I a perfect choice? Not necessarily. I mean, I think anybody who's truly certified as a kettlebell instructor would look at that exercise and go, well, I mean, you can, and here's the thing, you can do anything you want, but do you want to do anything you want that's going to hurt you long term? When you do some of the workouts you saw in the HKC book or at DJU, there's workouts where there are swings and goblet squats and push-ups. The humane burpee is a great example. You do 15 swings, you do 5 goblet squats, you do 5 push-ups. You do 15 swings, 4 goblet squats, 4 push-ups. You know where this is going. 15-3-3, 15-2-2, 15-1-1, and done. That's 75 swings, 15 goblet squats, 15 push-ups. That's a pretty good little workout for you. And the nice thing is you have time to correct. You have time to fix things. If you feel something kind of barking at you in the middle of those swings, you can put the load down and say, okay, okay. Check things out. You do the goblet squats, that makes it feel better. You do the push-ups, that makes you, tired. You pop back up and you keep going. But if you do an exercise that has any kind of some built-in danger, and there's a lot of exercises with that. I mean, the number of injuries I've seen, there's kettlebell exercises that we teach at the RKC too. I wouldn't say I've ever, done correctly, I've never seen anyone get hurt in a windmill, especially if we build up to it appropriately. But I can see someone getting the bent press. Maybe not. Yeah, there's a load up there. I have seen people, and I've had people come to my gym who got hurt doing way too heavy Turkish get-ups. In my case, I've missed lifts and gotten injured, Olympic lifting. So, there is a risk when you train. However, if you follow what you're doing, Stefan, where you're doing the goblet squat, the swing, the Turkish get-up variations, and the press variations, you're going to be in that safety zone. And especially at your age, Stefan, you just don't want to get hurt. And by the way, 54, you're a child. You know, I'm decades older than you. But there is no good reason for you now to do anything at your age. You need to focus on, you know, hypertrophy, and that's your press and your squat work, your cardiovascular stuff, and that'd be your swing. Well, all the exercises you mentioned could be cardiovascular. Your mobility, and you'll see that with the goblet squat and the get up. You're doing the things you need to do at your age appropriately. You're going to notice that if you do get hurt doing something you saw online, you won't recover like you did just even a decade ago. And that's something I want to kind of warn you about. I think your question is outstanding, and I hope that helped. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We got a question from Andrew. Andrew's 39 years old, 185 pounds, and has recently fallen in love with the Zercher squat. Well, congratulations. As you know, I have a ministry. I still have all the certificates, and I can marry you, Andrew, and the Zercher squat. That was an attempt at humor. I have found a pretty good routine in doing the clean and press, Zercher squat, and loaded carries 3 days a week. That's not bad. Clean and press and loaded carries by themselves is a pretty good workout. In the Zercher squat, for those you don't know the Zercher squat, it's when you hold the barbell in the what is it, the bend in the elbow. It slides down there. You pat it up. Really, if you look at what the goblet squat does with the kettlebell, it is a kind of a barbell goblet squat, and I think that's why a lot of people naturally find them pretty good. There is a body type that really likes the Zercher squat. And then there's people like me that don't like their elbows to get raw with the barbell. I'm familiar with your standards regarding the press and loaded carries, but I was wondering, what would you consider pretty good regarding the Zercher squat? Well, so if you like the Zercher squat, and there are people who swear by it, and their best friend who trains with them thinks it's the stupidest exercise ever. It is an interesting exercise. It's one of those U-shaped exercises. You love it, you hate it. Very few people in the middle who've tried it. I wouldn't mind seeing you, even getting, if you can do body weight for reps, I think that would be a very good standard. And honestly, if you like it enough, you probably could go pretty darn heavy on them. I have friends, I got a buddy in Michigan who can do Zerchers well into the 400s. And that's just laudable. But of course, and he'd be the first to tell you that he's born to Zercher. Bruce Springsteen's, "Baby, I was born to Zercher squat." That was the original song, and then they changed it later on. So for me, and for those of you who don't want to do Zercher squats, pay attention here. I think the goblet squat is the goblet squat, the Zercher squat, really have kind of the same values. For one thing, for a lot of people, both of them allow you to get into a much deeper position. It really makes your body have to become a weightlifting belt to hold on to things. The fact that the weight is in front makes you have to counter it. And even right there, I could feel my ab wall tighten up in the example. So if whatever you want to call it this week, the core, the column, whatever, this area of your body, it makes it tighten up, light up, and there's real value to that. Downsides, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you like it, you love it. So I don't know if I would ever force a client or an athlete to do Zercher squats. We might show them, and if they say, "Oh, I like this," then we run with it because it's a good exercise. I hope that's good. It's a little, it's always difficult. There's certain exercises that are difficult to work with in the weight room because there's some issues. I love the overhead squat. I I know lots and lots of people who think it's an idiotic exercise because you're holding the load up there. So there's a lot of exercises that work well for you, they work well for me, but don't always translate to the general population. Exercises that I do think translate, the goblet squat, the plank family, suitcase carries. Oh, there's a few others, I guess. I have that thing called the perfect workout, the half kneeling press, the hang, the hip thrust, the suitcase carry. Those almost are universally good exercises. Almost, there's always issues. Not everyone can do everything. But the Zercher would be on that other side of, if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, you don't. That's a good question, Andrew. These are good questions this week. All right, we have a question from Eric. Hi, Eric. I'd love to hear your thoughts on reverse hyperextensions. Okay, so hyperextensions, when I was young, we had the load either on our chest, we held on to the plate or the whatever, or you had a barbell on your neck, and your feet were stuck into something. In our case, it was a wall. Our heels got into this little pipe, so it couldn't go anywhere. And then we had the bench right here on the top of the thighs, and then you just leaned over and came up. The reverse hyper is when your upper body doesn't move and your legs go up and down like this. Just look up the thing. I wish we'd had the reverse hyper when I was a young lifter, because I think it's a brilliant exercise, but let's keep going. Assuming you think they're worth doing, I think so. Who may benefit from doing them? Are they good for everyone or only those with specific deficiencies? The reverse hyper, so, like I make the joke about raise your hand if your shoulder hurts. The number of people I know with back injuries is probably everyone I know. The reverse hyper, because the load is down on the ankles, you get this nice little, as you start the lift, you get this nice little traction in the back, and then you give a chance to bring it up. In my experience, which is limited, I found that using lighter weights and getting more reps was really made me feel great. Okay, so that's part one. Okay. When would you do them? In the beginning of the workout, at the end, or maybe as part of the tonic? Yeah, so with Dick Notmeyer, hyperextensions were part of the warm-up, because everything, if it wasn't a snatch and a clean and jerk, it wasn't important. We did presses after the snatches and clean and jerks, but everything else was before. I would still probably think, and if you have any kind of leg or back issues, the reverse hyper might be a nice, and you mentioned here in the next part, tonic. It might be a real nice way to get a little blood moving and just do that little check-in. Like if I'm going to do front squats, like I'm front squatting tomorrow, I'll do goblet squats in the warm-up just to kind of check in to see how my squat pattern is. I don't know of too many exercises in the weight room where you're not going to do that movement with your back and whatever, that hingy bend over motion. Now I'm running out of words. Yeah, so I think in the beginning would be nice, but you could also do a nice finisher with it too. It would be weird though if you do high reps with it, because for me, it really pumped up my spinal erectors, so that I always felt like, you're in the chair so much taller. And he asked, dynamic or slow and controlled? Now, somebody else could argue this, but in my experience, slow and controlled. That doesn't mean that there's not someone listening that says, no, I do them really fast. But for the uses I use them for, slow and controlled. Joe Rogan has spoken highly on his podcast about reverse hypers. Joe Rogan, he was on a TV show called News Radio, and he was like the electrician, and he was like a savant, and that's what I remembered him from. And then years later, somebody told me that he was like some expert on MMA and ultimate fighting and stuff, and I was like, that's the same guy, and I think it's kind of cool in a way. And he became famous. My friend Chuck told me all this. He became famous on a show where they made you like sit in a casket with centipedes or something like that. I don't remember the name of it. But his podcast, and I didn't really know much about his podcast until he interviewed my friend Pavel on it. And it was, I don't know, when I watched it, it looked a little bit like oil and water with the two of them. There's a few friends of mine, and the fact that I got a buddy who has got a great Pavel accent, and every time you mention Pavel, he does. I think Pavel asked for a cup of black tea or something like that. But Joe Rogan's podcast is quite good. It can be quite good. Of course, it's all over the place. It's a podcast. You never know. But he's a big fan of reverse hypers, and I applaud it. I think it's good. In fact, if someone famous is applauding an exercise like goblet squats, reverse hypers, suitcase carries, going for a walk, I think it's good for everybody, okay? And I hope that helped. This is a very good question, and I hope you keep doing them, and I hope more people keep doing them, because if they do, the prices will come down on those systems. And I'd like to have my own home reverse hyper. So if you have a lot of money and you want to make me happy, please send me a reverse hyper machine. Thank you. Okay, we got a question from Marcus. I recently realized that I'll never make it into the NFL. He's 6'5" and 180 pounds at 38 years. Wow. And I love this little line. I was that close. But it wasn't meant to be. Living in Germany, a country with not quite a vast football fandom in the United States, has probably something to do with it as well. But here comes the question. I still want to become a fan because it looks like such fun to watch. How do I go about it? I guess the pirate map is simple. Pick a team, watch the games, coach from the sofa, cheer, and argue about, he says, red decisions. A flag, they're yellow where we live. But there's so much other stuff like college football, conferences, tailgating. How would you go about introducing a stranger to the world, to the sport, to the discipline, and the culture surrounding it? Listen, I love your question, because as an adult, of course, I started, long after my college years were over, university years as an athlete were over, I still competed as an open discus thrower. And then I discovered the Highland Games. And I knew nothing about the Highland Games, and yet, I don't know, 40-ish years later? Yeah, about 40. I'm considered like an expert, on some of it. And it only took me overnight success. Only took 40 years. So anytime you're going into a new sport or a new game, and I've done this myself with the Highland Games, okay? And I've actually done it with rugby, because when I go over to Europe all the time, many of my students and the people I coach play rugby, and so I had to learn the game. So this is good, because the way I've always done it is I get books and I read them, and I learn from books. I'm a book learner. So that's still the thing I would recommend first. But what I'd love, if we could do it, and I'd love to be the person to help walk you through this, is find someone to know the game, who knows the game, and sit down, and it doesn't have to be it can be any kind of game, and go over the concepts. There's a rule in American football that I think is very important. The offense has to have 7 men on the line of scrimmage. And by the way, I'm not being sexist. That's what the rules say, 7 men. You can. My friend Lonnie has 2 women on his football teams, but they're still men in football. Well, that's the rule. To start a play on offense, there has to be 7 men on the line of scrimmage. Of those 7, only 2 are allowed to catch the ball and go downfield on passes, and those are the ends. Well, when I work with people on American football and explain the game to them, I always start with that simple rule first. In the same way that to understand chess, I think it helps a lot if you're learning chess, and this was one of the ways I was taught, is you started the games with just the pawns and the kings. And all you had were pawns and kings, 2 kings, all the pawns, and you played against each other. And what you got a chance to do is simplify the game down, learn about pawn structure, Learn about, a big one, pawns can't go backwards, which is huge. How powerful a king can be in a pawn-only game. Protecting pawns with the king and protecting pawns with each other. By simplifying the game down to that level, it was easy to learn the game, the rest of the game. With American football, simplifying the game down to just the 7, and so you start there. That'd be the first rule. There's a lot of complicated rules in American football. For example, a muff is different than a fumble, and it's important to know that. And if you're coaching, it's really important to know that. There are legal and illegal tackles. There's all kinds of things. But there's also a beauty and a structure of the game that gets lost unless you know what's going on. One of the things I would recommend for you to do, maybe, I don't know if you get college football games there, but I tell you, watching college football nowadays in the new era of American football, you're going to see all kinds of fun formations, all kinds of stuff going on, and it might be really valuable for you to learn it by watching the lower level games. So, 1, get yourself a couple of books, read it over, get a sense of the rules, get a sense of the concepts. I used to have a book, the Sportsman's Encyclopedia. It's somewhere, but what was good about it is they had a nice little history. They showed you the basics, the fundamentals, and from there you could go right on. Bud Wilkinson's old book was very good. Bear Bryant's book on football I thought was outstanding, and I'm sure there's a lot more modern books than what I just said. After that, sit down with somebody who knows what's going on. You have a lot of American military in Germany, and I'm sure you could find someone who could explain the basics and watch a game with you and buy them a beer, and everyone will be happy. And then after that, as best you can, find a team that you like. I have my own crazy set of rules about teams I follow and cheer for. There's certainly, let's do it this way. There are teams I hate, so whoever plays them are my favorite teams, especially if that other team beats the teams I hate. Then there's the teams I like, and sadly sometimes they play each other, which gets tough. And so I always try to have like I follow a number of teams because somebody I knew, son or daughter, went to that school. I follow certain programs because I like the mascot, or I like their colors. It's not all scientific. And once you start following a team, you will pick up on the other nuances as time goes on. I'm thinking that you're probably just a few seasons from being really understanding the game well. And by the way, gentle listeners, no matter what sport you get interested in, give yourself a little bit of time to figure things out. And don't just wipe your hands and say, I don't get it. I'm amazed sometimes how quick people are to just intellectually walk away from something because they don't want to put the effort in. Marcus, that was a fun question. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we got a question from Rory has a question that I would like to answer. First off, Rory, and any other high school strength and conditioning coach or any other high school coach, these are tough questions for me to answer on the podcast simply because there's so much more. But because you're a coach, I feel like I'm honor bound to help you out. So when you email the podcast, ask them to send the email to me, okay, personally. And maybe we can talk on the phone and I can help you more there. Sound good? I recently took a new job at a relatively new high school that has never had a strength and conditioning program. Wow, you're going to be a trailblazer. It's going to be tough. I am speaking in June at the National High School Strength and Conditioning Coaches. I'm the keynote, and I hope you're there. And come up and shake my hand, and then we'll go talk. I'm teaching outside my subject area, but hopefully moving into the PE department next year, and also the head track and field coach. Rory, you remind me of me, and that's not a good thing. No, I'm joking. It's tough work. Part of the reason I was brought in to get a S&C program going and have been running after-school workouts for the past month. On one level, there seems to be interest and support. Yeah, everyone supports you as long as you make them happy. It's a tough job, man. But on another, no budget for new equipment or buy-in from the higher-ups. Only have 3 kettlebells, mostly ancient machines, and not much emphasis on the PE department. I've been there, man. I was wondering what advice you have for helping the administration see the importance of investing time and resources into the strength and conditioning program, as well as emphasizing the strength and conditioning PE classes. I chose this position over multiple offers to be a military strength and conditioning coach due to this being a great location for my family, and I'm not trying to second guess coming here. Well, first off, okay, the calendar is your friend. The roll book is your friend. The number one thing I want you to start doing is taking meticulous roll, whether it's after school, whether it's in class. Take roll, know who's there, and then start charting out who shows up. I got to tell you, one of the most important things you can do as a strength coach is focus on attendance. The way you get strong in a 4-year high school period is you lift weights for 4 years, and you'll get very strong doing it. And for the kids that only show up, for me, well, of course, okay, I'll grant you, I was a lunatic, but I probably had 1,200 to 1,500 workouts, weight workouts in my high school career. I'm not bragging. Why did I get really strong? Well, I lifted weights 1,200 to 1,500 times in the weight room or at home. Well, why didn't this kid over there get strong? Well, he lifted the 3 weeks he was required to by the coach, so he did 9 workouts. So you've got to be, and fill it out, have charts on the walls, and fill it out. I mean, even if you want to buy little gold stars for every time they come in there, you put a gold star on their name. There's always an injured kid, have them take care of that. You got to trust them on that. You need standards. Any of my books have standards. You can just look up Sleepless in Seattle. I have the big blue standards and the big silver for girls standards. Look at standards and start getting people moving to the idea that we need, and maybe they don't work for you. You have to come up with your own, and I'm fine with that. But come up with your own standards. This is what I expect. It starts with roll, showing up, getting things done. Even if you don't have weights, you can do push-ups, you can do planks, you can do squats. I got a book back here. I don't necessarily like it as much, but I don't like it. Nothing against Matt Hill. It's Systema Health. By the way, it was funny that was back there. You can do these, you can do these squat exercises, these push-up exercises. You can do hip thrusts without load. You can do all kinds of exercises. Calisthenics, you could make circuit training going on. You have 1,000 resources if you use your head. Sorry for not being as organized as I normally, I'm never organized. But somewhere are my German editions of circuit training. And circuit training is still, in my opinion, the best way to train the high school athletes. Okay, so complexes in circuit training are the best way to train high school athletes. A complex is where you have one bar, one bell, and you do a series of exercises back to back to back to back to back. So tomorrow I'm going to do the snatch complex. So I'm going to do a set of 8 in the Romanian snatch grip, Romanian deadlift. I'll do a set of 8 in the hang snatch. I will do a set of 8 in the overhead squat. I'll do a set of 8 in the back squat. Put the weight in the ground, and I'll repeat that 3 to 5 times. So that's a complex. Circuits is when I do push-ups, and then I move over there, and I do hip thrusts, and I move over there, and I do bodyweight squats, and I move over there, and I hold a plank, and I move over there, and I do pull-ups, and I move over there, and I touch my toes, and I move over here, and I do something else. Circuits is, both of them are the best way to train the bulk of the high school population. Now, having said that, 15 years from now, if you're still there, Rory, and I hope you are, and you have a full and beautiful weight room, you'll be doing like I did. Okay, for the next 6 weeks, we're going to Olympic lift, we're going to snatch and clean and jerk, and all the kids back, got it. Now we're doing kettlebells for the next 3 weeks. Got it. Now we're doing a mixed amount. Got it. But that's going to take time to develop. Rory, I'm going to put together a packet of things for the talk I'm doing in June at the Nationals. Maybe I can put it up on DJU or something like that so that's available to everybody, okay? It'll have complexes, it'll have some workout ideas, and I'm going to do my best to help you out. If you get a chance, if you go to my early T-Nation articles, there are some programs in there like the Southwood program. And by the way, just type in Dan John Southwood program and you'll find my PDF from the ground up, which I would recommend strongly as a strength coach for you to read and memorize. You might even be able to find the Coyote Point Kettlebell Club PDF. These are both, that's about 104 pages of reading for you. Gosh, I hope that helps. You're in a tough spot. And it's going to take you 3 or 4 years to get the culture to come around, to get the administration to come around. That's going to be part of my talk at the Nationals. Counselors who take kids out of the weight class because it's not an important class. Well, it really was to me. It's funny when you think of all those, I've written 15 books, and yet, they would take me out of weightlifting classes. Well, that's fine. The weightlifting classes long-term were more important for me at the time than my English class, and yet now, I've written all these books. I don't know if I made that point very clear, but it made sense up here. In other words, why are you taking an athlete out of the class that's going to make them a better athlete, and then, like in my case, pay for all their education? Well, Roy, I'm going to do my best to put some stuff together for you and help out. And any other, S&C coaches, let me know how I can help, okay? Well, there you go, folks. That's another edition in the banks. You could hear my grandson yelling and screaming throughout. That's always fun. Remember, if you have questions, email them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.